Martian MMA Cage Match by Jansen Davies. Chapter 1. The General in Hiding. Morgan Skeed wasn't his real name. His true name, etched in Martian glyphs and spoken in frequencies that shattered glass, had echoed across war-torn moons and blood-soaked nebulae. But on Earth, he wore a name that fit inside human mouths. Morgan Skeed, a name that sounded like a retired lumberjack or a man who sold used trucks in Montana. Perfect camouflage. He lived in a modest house tucked into the pine-shadowed hills of Oregon. The locals thought he was a quiet veteran with a limp and a love for solitude. They didn't ask questions. He didn't offer answers. His cloaking collar, a relic of Martian stealth tech, projected a human form, grizzled, broad-shouldered, with eyes that flickered too fast to be natural. It was calibrated to emit mild pheromones of trust and disinterest. People forgot him the moment they walked away. That was the point. Morgan had commanded fleets that could blot out stars. He'd led ground assaults on planets where gravity bent sideways and time ran in loops. He'd outwitted telepathic monarchs, crushed rebellion on floating cities, and once negotiated peace by arm-wrestling a sentient volcano. And then he retired. Not because he was tired, not because he was wounded, but because he'd won. Every war, every battle, every challenge. The galaxy had nothing left to offer him but recycled vengeance and ceremonial parades. Earth was the only place that hadn't heard of him. That made it safe. For 2 years, he lived quietly. He grew tomatoes. He read human philosophy and scoffed at its linear logic. He watched birds and tried to understand their territorial disputes. He even tried yoga once, but his Martian joints didn't bend that way. But boredom is a predator, and Morgan was prey. One night, while scanning Earth's primitive entertainment broadcasts, he stumbled upon something unexpected. A cage match. 2 humans locked in brutal combat. No weapons, no armor, just fists, knees, and raw strategy. He leaned forward. The strikes were crude but familiar. The grappling resembled Martian bone lock techniques. The footwork echoed the war dances of the Red Dunes. It was primitive, yes, but it was honest. It was war distilled. Morgan Skeed felt something stir. He spent the next week absorbing every MMA broadcast he could find. He studied fighters, techniques, rule sets. He downloaded footage into his neural archive and ran simulations in his sleep. He shadowboxed in his living room until the walls cracked. Then he made a decision. He would enter the cage. Not to conquer, not to kill, but to feel again, to test himself against Earth's best, to see if the fire still burned. He forged documents, created a backstory. Morgan Skeed, ex-military, trained in obscure martial arts. He applied to a regional fight circuit. They gave him a slot on the undercard of a mid-tier event in Portland. Chapter 2. The First Fight. The cage was smaller than he expected. Morgan Skeed had fought in arenas carved into asteroid cores, on battlefields where gravity pulsed like a heartbeat. He'd once dueled a 6-limbed war priest inside a collapsing starship. But this cage, steel bars, rubber mat, sweat-stained canvas, felt intimate, primitive, honest. He liked it. The crowd was loud, not war chant loud, not orbital bombardment loud, but human loud. Cheers, jeers, the clatter of beer cups and the buzz of anticipation. It reminded him of the tribal rallies on the moons of Vexar Prime, where warriors danced before battle and the air smelled of ozone and blood. His opponent was named Tank McMurphy, a local legend. Built like a cargo hauler, covered in tattoos that told stories Morgan didn't care to read. Tank bounced on his heels, grinning through a mouthguard, radiating confidence. Morgan didn't bounce. He stood still, calculating. The referee gave the signal. The bell rang. Tank charged. Morgan sidestepped with surgical precision, his body moving in angles no human anatomy should allow. He tapped the collar at his neck, subtly recalibrating his posture to mimic human biomechanics. No need to reveal too much. Not yet. Tank swung a haymaker. Morgan ducked, pivoted, and struck. One blow. Open palm. Center mass. Tank staggered, eyes wide. Morgan followed with a sweep, a Martian bone lock maneuver disguised as a judo throw. Tank hit the mat hard. The crowd gasped. Morgan didn't pause. He mounted, locked Tank's arm, and applied pressure, not enough to break, just enough to end it. Tank tapped out. The fight was over in 47 seconds. Silence. Then chaos. The crowd erupted. Promoters scrambled. Commentators shouted into microphones. Morgan stood, expressionless, as the referee raised his hand. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply walked out of the cage. Backstage, the organizers were already buzzing. Who the hell is this guy? Where'd he train? Can we get him on the next card? Morgan gave them a rehearsed story. Ex-military, trained overseas, prefers to stay off social media. He was becoming a legend again. But legends attract attention. And somewhere, far beyond Earth's orbit, a bounty broker leaned back in his chair, watching Morgan's latest fight on a cracked holoscreen. He smiled and began to make calls. That night, Morgan sat in his quiet house, watching the fight replay on 6 screens. He analyzed every angle, every reaction. He wasn't looking at Tank. He was looking at himself. The fire was back. He hadn't felt it in years, not since the siege of Carthon, not since he'd walked away from the battlefield and buried his war medals in Martian sand. He opened a secure channel. A voice answered. Female, sharp, familiar. "You're fighting again," she said. "I'm adapting," Morgan replied. "You're being watched." "I always am." The line went dead. Morgan leaned back, eyes scanning the Oregon night through reinforced glass. Somewhere out there, Earth slept peacefully, unaware that its newest sports sensation was a Martian general in disguise, unaware that the galaxy had started to pay attention. Chapter 3. The Rise. Morgan Skeed didn't crave fame. He'd had enough of that on Mars, where statues were carved in his honor, and children were named after his battle formations. But Earth had a different rhythm. Fame here was noisy, fast, and viral. After his debut fight, the underground MMA circuit lit up. Clips of his takedown circulated on social media. Commentators called him a ghost in the cage, a tactical anomaly, and the most dangerous man you've never heard of. Promoters scrambled to book him again. Fans speculated about his mysterious past. Some said he was ex-Special Forces. Others claimed he was a monk who trained in Siberia. One podcast theorized he was a genetically enhanced clone. Morgan said nothing. He accepted the next fight, then the next. Each opponent was tougher, more technical, more brutal. But Morgan moved through them like a scalpel through silk. His style was unorthodox, fluid, reactive, almost alien. He used angles no one trained for. He countered before attacks were launched. He made violence look like choreography. And he never celebrated. That unnerved people. In the locker rooms, fighters avoided eye contact. Trainers whispered. One promoter tried to bribe Morgan for a post-fight interview. Morgan declined. He didn't need words. His fists spoke fluently. By his 5th fight, he was headlining regional events. The crowds grew. The lights got brighter. The money poured in. Morgan donated most of it anonymously to veterans' hospitals and disaster relief funds. He kept just enough to upgrade his home defenses, because he knew what was coming. On the outer rim of the galaxy, in a derelict station orbiting a dead star, a bounty broker named Varn watched Morgan's latest fight on a cracked holoscreen. Varn had no eyes, just a cluster of sensory nodes that pulsed with data. He recognized Morgan instantly. "General Skeed," he hissed. He tapped into the bounty network. Old contracts flickered to life. Warlords, monarchs, and exiled tyrants had long memories, and Morgan's face, even cloaked in human flesh, was unmistakable to those who had once feared him. Earth was no longer off-grid. Back in Oregon, Morgan sat in his living room, watching his own fight in slow motion. He paused the footage at the moment his opponent threw a spinning elbow. Morgan had countered with a Martian shoulder roll, a move designed to redirect kinetic force into the ground. He rewound, watched again. He wasn't studying the opponent. He was studying himself. The fire was growing. He opened a secure channel. No voice this time. Just a message. "They know." Morgan closed the screen. Outside, the wind rustled the pines. A deer wandered past his perimeter sensors. The stars above blinked in silence. He had come to Earth to disappear. Now he was becoming a legend again. Chapter 4. The Championship. The arena was louder than war. Morgan Skeed stood beneath the lights, wrapped in silence. His heart didn't race. His breath didn't quicken. But something in the air felt wrong, like the moment before a Martian sandstorm, when the sky turned violet and the ground whispered warnings. He was fighting for Earth's MMA championship. The crowd roared his name. "Skeed! Skeed! Skeed!" They didn't know what it meant. On Mars, it was a title reserved for generals who'd survived planetary extinction events. Here, it was just a name on a fight card. His opponent was Dante, the Apex Cruise. Undefeated, charismatic, a showman with a killer instinct and a jaw carved from granite. He entered the cage with swagger, arms raised, feeding off the crowd's energy. But Morgan didn't look at the crowd. He looked at Dante, and saw through him. The cloaking tech was subtle, a skin shimmer, a micro flicker in the iris, a faint distortion in the air around his shoulders. Morgan had seen it before, on the battlefield, in assassination attempts, in diplomatic ambushes. Dante Cruz wasn't human. The bell rang. They circled. Dante moved like a predator, fluid, confident, rehearsed. Morgan mirrored him, adjusting his stance, recalibrating his collar to mask his own alien reflexes. This wasn't just a fight, it was a test. Dante struck first, a spinning back kick aimed at Morgan's ribs. Morgan blocked, countered, and felt the impact reverberate through his bones. Not human strength, not human speed. They traded blows, grappled, clinched. The crowd saw a championship bout. Morgan saw a duel between two off-world warriors, each hiding in plain sight. Dante whispered during the clinch, "You should have stayed buried, General." Morgan responded with a headbutt that cracked Dante's nose. The fight escalated. Dante unleashed techniques no Earth gym taught, gravity-defying sweeps, pressure point strikes designed for Martian physiology. Morgan adapted, countered, endured. Blood spilled, bones strained. The cage became a war zone. Then Dante made a mistake. He tried a neural lock, a forbidden move used by bounty assassins to paralyze alien targets. Morgan recognized it instantly. He reversed the grip, twisted Dante's arm, and slammed him into the mat with a Martian war throw. The crowd exploded. Dante staggered to his feet, dazed. Morgan closed the distance, feinted left, and delivered a strike to the cloaking node behind Dante's ear. The illusion shattered. For a split second, the crowd saw something monstrous: scaled skin, black eyes, a mouth full of needle teeth. Then the cloak re-engaged. But it was too late. Morgan finished the fight with a rear-naked choke. Dante tapped. The referee raised Morgan's hand. He was Earth's MMA champion. But Morgan didn't celebrate. He scanned the crowd, cameras, reporters, fans, and somewhere in the shadows, a figure slipped away, its cloak flickering, its eyes locked on Morgan. The Bounty Network had seen enough. Chapter 5. The Broadcast. The championship fight was supposed to be the climax. Instead, it was the ignition. Morgan Skeed's victory over Dante Cruz went viral within hours. Every sports network replayed the footage. Analysts dissected his technique. Fans flooded forums with theories. But it wasn't the chokehold or the footwork that caught attention. It was the flicker. That moment, barely a frame, when Dante's disguise failed. When the cameras caught something scaled, something wrong. Most viewers dismissed it as a glitch, a lighting error, a compression artifact. But not everyone. Far beyond Earth's orbit, in the shadowed reaches of the Bounty Network, the footage was flagged, decrypted, and analyzed. The cloaking failure was unmistakable, and the man who caused it, Morgan Skeed, was identified. The contracts reactivated, old enemies stirred, warlords who had buried their grudges, monarchs who had lost empires to Morgan's tactics, exiled generals who had once knelt before him in surrender. They all watched the broadcast. They all remembered, and they all wanted blood. On Earth, Morgan felt the shift. He sat in his living room surrounded by screens. News anchors speculated about his origins. "Is Morgan Skeed even human?" one headline asked. A podcast titled Alien in the Octagon climbed the charts. Conspiracy theorists dug into his non-existent past. Morgan ignored them. He was watching something else. Encrypted feeds, galactic chatter, bounty forums. The contracts were live, prices were high, and Earth, once a quiet backwater, was now a beacon. He activated his perimeter defenses. The house transformed, walls thickened, drones deployed, glyphs etched into the foundation pulsed with Martian energy. The garden became a kill zone. The mailbox was now a plasma turret. Morgan didn't panic. He prepared. He contacted Jara. Her voice came through a secure channel, sharp and urgent. "They're coming." "I know. They won't send amateurs." "I'm counting on it." She paused. "You could leave. We have safe zones, off-world." Morgan looked out the window. Children played in the distance. A dog barked. The sky was blue. "No," he said. "Earth needs a general." Jara didn't argue. The line went dead. Morgan stood, stretched, and walked to the center of his living room. He tapped a panel. The floor opened. A weapons cache rose from the ground, blades, blasters, and relics from 100 wars. He selected a pair of gloves. Not for killing, for fighting, because the cage was open again, and this time the galaxy was watching. Chapter 6. Fortress Skeed. The house was no longer a house. It had once been a quiet retreat. Pine trees, gravel driveway, a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Now it was a war bunker disguised as a cabin. Morgan Skeed had spent the last 72 hours converting every inch of it into a defensive perimeter. The bird bath was a motion-triggered EMP mine. The garden gnomes were surveillance drones with cloaking mesh. Inside, the walls had become armored, reinforced with Martian alloys and kinetic dampeners. The windows were now one-way force fields. The basement had become a command center, holographic maps, encrypted feeds, and a weapons cache that could arm a small rebellion. Morgan stood in the center of it all, shirtless, scarred, and calm. He was preparing for war. The Bounty Network had activated. He'd intercepted chatter, encrypted signals bouncing off satellites, disguised as weather data. Hit squads were en route. Some were human mercenaries with alien tech. Others were pure off-world killers, cloaked in flesh and arrogance. They underestimated Earth. They underestimated him. He tapped a console. A hologram flickered to life. Jara. his old ally from the Saturnian resistance. Her eyes glowed with psychic strain. She looked tired. She looked ready. "They're coming in waves," she said. "First contact in 24 hours. 3 squads, mixed species, light armor, recon only." "Testing the perimeter," Morgan said. "Testing you." He nodded. "They should have read up on my history first." Jara hesitated. "You could still leave. We have a ship cloaked in orbit. It's fast, quiet. No one would follow." Morgan looked out the window. A deer wandered past the tree line. The sky was bruised with dusk. "I didn't come here to run," he said. "I came here to rest." "But rest is a luxury. Earth doesn't know what's out there. Someone has to teach them." Jara smiled, sad and proud. "You always did love lost causes. They're the only ones worth fighting for." The hologram faded. Morgan walked to the armory, selected a pair of Martian gauntlets, lightweight, pressure-sensitive, capable of amplifying strikes with kinetic bursts. He strapped them on, flexed his fingers, and felt the old fire return. Outside, the wind shifted. Sensors pinged. 3 figures approached the property, disguised as delivery workers. One carried a pizza box, another held a clipboard, the third had a duffel bag that pulsed with alien energy. Morgan didn't wait. He stepped outside, calm and barefoot. "Wrong house," he said. The first bounty hunter lunged. Morgan moved like a storm, precise, brutal, poetic. He used the porch railing as leverage, flipped the attacker into the gravel, and killed him with a single strike to the spine. The second drew a blade. Morgan disarmed him with a garden rake and a Martian joint lock maneuver. He then broke his neck. The third tried to run. Morgan threw the pizza box. It exploded mid-air. EMP charge hidden in the crust. Silence. 3 bodies on the ground, one still breathing. Morgan dragged the survivor inside. Chapter 7. The Interrogation. The basement was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from silence, but the kind that follows violence. The kind that hums with tension, like a blade waiting to be drawn. Morgan Skeed stood over the bound bounty hunter, whose disguise had failed hours earlier. The creature's true form was insectoid, scaled carapace, mandibles twitching, eyes like polished obsidian. It had stopped struggling. It had started listening. The interrogation glyphs glowed faintly on the walls, etched in Martian script, pulsing with psychic resonance. They didn't extract information through pain. They extracted through memory, through fear. Morgan activated the glyphs. The room shimmered. The bounty hunter gasped, convulsed, then spoke, not in words but in images. Morgan saw flashes, a war council on a drifting station, holograms of his face projected across star maps, bounty prices climbing with each victory. He saw Earth circled in red, not just as a location, as a target. The bounty wasn't just personal. It was strategic. Morgan stepped back, processing. The hunter's memories revealed more than vengeance. They revealed intent. Earth's rise in galactic visibility, its broadcasts, its MMA circuits, its viral culture, had drawn attention. Warlords saw it as a soft planet, unarmed, unaware, a perfect foothold. Morgan had made it visible. His victories had made it vulnerable. He deactivated the glyphs. The hunter slumped, unconscious. Morgan didn't kill him. He didn't need to. The message was clear. He walked upstairs into the command center. The screens flickered with news, conspiracy theories, fan edits, speculation about his origins. One headline read, "Morgan Skeed, Alien or Savior." He ignored it. He opened a secure channel to Jara. "They're not just hunting me," he said. "They're scouting Earth." Jara's face appeared grim. "We suspected. The broadcasts contain leaked information of who you really are. The outer system are going to use you as a pretense to infiltrate Earth. They think it's weak. They're wrong, Morgan nodded. We need to prepare. Jara leaned forward. Resistance cells are mobilizing. Fighters, tacticians, off-world allies. But Earth needs more than soldiers. It needs symbols. Morgan looked at the cage footage playing on loop. His final chokehold. The flicker of alien skin. The moment the crowd saw something they couldn't explain. I'll give them one, he said. Jara smiled. Then let's make you mythic. The feed cut. Morgan stood alone, surrounded by weapons, screens, and the hum of a planet on the edge of awakening. The cage had become a crucible, and Morgan Skeed was no longer just a champion. He was Earth's first line of defense. Chapter 8. The cage reopens. The cage was different now. It wasn't just steel and canvas. It was a symbol, a beacon, a trap. Morgan Skeed stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by lights, cameras, and thousands of screaming fans. To them, this was a comeback, a rematch, a spectacle. But to Morgan, it was bait. He'd requested the fight himself. The promoters were ecstatic. The Phantom General returns, the posters screamed. Unfinished business, the media speculated endlessly. Where had he gone? Why had he vanished? Was he injured? Was he human? Morgan gave no interviews. He trained in silence. He studied the footage of his past fights. He modified his cloaking collar to emit subtle distortions, just enough to attract attention from off-world bounty networks. He wanted them to see him. He wanted them to come. The opponent was a newcomer, young, fast, charismatic. But Morgan wasn't watching him. He was watching the crowd, scanning for flickers, cloaking glitches, aura distortions, alien signatures. He found 3, disguised as fans, one near the cage, one in the VIP box, one posing as a camera operator. All bounty hunters, all watching him. Perfect. The bell rang. Morgan moved slowly at first, testing, baiting, letting the opponent land a few strikes. The crowd gasped. Commentators speculated. Is Skeed rusty? Has age caught up with him? Then Morgan struck. A Martian feint, a gravity-shifted sweep, a kinetic elbow that sent the opponent sprawling. The crowd erupted. The bounty hunters leaned forward. Morgan turned toward the camera and winked. It wasn't just a fight, it was a message. To Earth, wake up. To the galaxy, I see you. To the hunters, come closer. He finished the match with a submission, clean, brutal, elegant. The crowd roared, the lights flared, the cage door opened. Morgan walked out, calm and victorious. Backstage, he bypassed the press. He entered a secure room, activated a glyph, and contacted Jara. They're here, he said. She nodded. We've intercepted chatter. They're mobilizing. Earth's broadcasts are being monitored in 12 outer sectors. Good, Morgan said. Let them watch. Jara leaned in. You're becoming a symbol. I'm becoming bait, she smiled. Same thing. Morgan ended the call. Outside, the crowd chanted his name. Inside, he prepared for war. The cage had reopened, and this time it wasn't just a fight. It was the beginning of Earth's awakening. Chapter 9. The Final Match. The arena was silent before the storm. Morgan Skeed stood in the center of the cage, surrounded by lights and anticipation. The crowd was massive, millions watching live, billions streaming across the planet. But Morgan wasn't focused on the fans. He was focused on the challenger. No name, no backstory, just a masked figure who had bypassed every vetting protocol, every biometric scan, every background check. The promoters called it a wild card. Morgan knew better. This was a message. The figure entered the cage with eerie grace, tall, fluid, cloaked in a shimmer that bent light. Morgan's collar pulsed, detecting gravitational anomalies, quantum distortions. This wasn't just an alien. This was something ancient. The bell rang. Time slowed. Morgan moved first, testing, probing. The challenger countered with impossible precision, predicting his feints, matching his speed. Their strikes collided midair, sending shockwaves through the cage. The crowd gasped. Some fainted. Others screamed. Reality bent. The cage flickered, walls dissolving into starlight, floor shifting into Martian sand. Morgan's mind strained to stay anchored. He'd fought in psychic arenas before, but this was different. This was mythic warfare disguised as sport. The challenger spoke, without moving its mouth. "You are not the only legend." Morgan responded with a flurry of strikes, Martian bone locks, kinetic bursts, gravity sweeps. The challenger absorbed them, adapted, evolved. It wasn't just fighting. It was learning. Morgan adjusted his collar, unleashing a burst of raw Martian energy. The crowd saw flashes, alien landscapes, war-torn moons, the siege of Carthan. The challenger staggered. Morgan pressed the advantage. He grappled, mounted, locked in a chokehold forged from Martian war rituals. The challenger resisted, then faltered. Its mask cracked. Beneath it, no face, just a void, a swirling mass of memory and vengeance. Morgan had heard rumors of spectre assassins, but he had never seen one before. Morgan tightened the hold. The spectre screamed, then tapped out. The fight was over. The crowd erupted. The lights flared. The cage returned to steel and canvas. Morgan stood, victorious, breathing hard, bloodied but whole. The challenger vanished. No interviews, no trophy, just silence. Backstage, Morgan collapsed into a chair. Jara appeared via hologram, her eyes wide. "You fought a spectre assassin," she said. "I won," Morgan replied. "For now." She leaned in. "That wasn't a bounty hunter. That was a scout, a herald, something older than war." Morgan nodded. "Then Earth needs more than fighters." Jara smiled. "It needs legends." Morgan stood. The cage had tested him. The galaxy had warned him. And the war was just beginning. Chapter 10. Unmasked. The moment lasted less than a second. A camera drone, damaged during the final match, caught a flicker. Morgan Skeed's cloaking collar short-circuited mid-exit. The footage was grainy, distorted, but unmistakable. His human form glitched. His true shape bled through. Not grotesque, not monstrous. Just other. Angular features, eyes that shimmered with layered pupils, red skin that refracted light like polished marble, a face sculpted by war and time. The clip went viral in under an hour. Some called it a hoax, others called it proof. Conspiracy theorists rejoiced, governments panicked. MMA fans were divided, half demanded answers, half declared him Earth's protector. One senator called for his arrest. A pop star released a tribute single-titled Alien Champion. Morgan ignored it all. He sat in his command center watching the chaos unfold across screens. News anchors speculated. Analysts debated. Religious leaders issued statements. The world was waking up, but not to the threat, to the legend of the retired Martian general. Jara appeared via hologram, her expression unreadable. "You're exposed," she said. "I was always exposed," Morgan replied. "They just didn't know what they were looking at." She nodded. "Earth's governments are scrambling. Some want to recruit you, others want to contain you. They'll do neither." Jara leaned in. "You've become a symbol, not just of strength, but of possibility, of resistance." Morgan stood, walked to the window. Outside, the forest was quiet. But above it, satellites shifted, drones hovered, eyes watched. "I didn't come here to be a symbol," he said. "But symbols choose us," Jara replied, "and you've already changed the narrative." Morgan turned back to the screens. One showed a protest, people holding signs that read, "We stand with Skeed." Another showed a military convoy approaching his coordinates. He tapped a console, activated a perimeter protocol. The forest shimmered with cloaking glyphs. The house vanished from satellite view. "I'll train them," he said. "Earth's fighters, its tacticians, its dreamers. I'll give them what the galaxy fears." Jara smiled. "A general." Morgan nodded. "A legend." The feed cut. Morgan stood alone, surrounded by weapons, screens, and the weight of a planet, awakening to its place in the stars. The mask was gone, the war was coming, and Earth had its champion. Chapter 11. The Choice. The stars above Oregon shimmered like distant memories. Morgan Skeed stood on the roof of his cloaked fortress, watching satellites drift across the sky. His collar was deactivated. No disguise, no illusion, just the war-scarred face of a Martian general exposed to the world. Below him, Earth was changing. News feeds buzzed with speculation. Governments scrambled to respond. Some demanded his surrender. Others offered alliances. A few tried to erase the footage, but it was too late. Morgan's final match had gone cosmic. The myth was loose. Inside, Jara's hologram hovered above the command console. Her voice was calm but urgent. "You've become a symbol," she said. "Not just of power, but of possibility. Earth's fighters are rallying. Resistance cells are forming. You could lead them from orbit. Safely, strategically." Morgan didn't answer right away. He walked through the house, past the armory, the training chamber, the glyph-etched walls, past the garden where EMP mines hid beneath tomato plants, past the living room where he'd first watched MMA and felt the fire return. He opened a door. Inside, a dozen fighters waited, human, young, raw. Some were ex-military, some were street brawlers. One was a teenage girl who'd hacked her way into his encrypted feed and begged to be trained. They stood at attention. Morgan looked at them, not as a general, but as a teacher. "You're not here to fight like me," he said. "You're here to fight like Earth." They didn't understand yet, but they would. He turned back to Jara. "I'm staying." She nodded. "Then we build." The next day, the fortress expanded. Morgan's property became a covert academy. Fighters arrived in unmarked vans, cloaked shuttles, and underground caravans. They trained in silence. No cameras, no broadcasts, just sweat, discipline, and mythic technique. Morgan taught them Martian bone locks, gravity sweeps, and psychic resistance. He taught them how to fight in zero-G, how to read cloaked auras, how to turn fear into strategy. But more than that, he taught them how to endure. Each match was a lesson, each sparring session a prophecy. Earth was no longer a passive planet. It was becoming a crucible, and Morgan Skeed was no longer just a warrior. He was a legend reborn. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.